Hey YouTubers, and we're back with another Dragon Ball discussion. Actually, this is more of kind of an anime discussion, really, but honestly, honestly guys, so today I'm joined by the one, the only, the distinguished d-freedbzhd. I say your name, the whole name every single time, you know that.
I know, man, and it's just like so bad. Every time they hear my voice, they come on like, oh, this guy again, that one guy that always plays too damn much. Oh, God, I'm just like, sorry, fuck, hey, don't hate me. Hey, guys, I'm back once again, with another video with Mark. So.
And today, actually, guys, this is a little bit more of a personal video, and it's kind of my basic explanation, really, as to why there's this kind of a rumor or kind of this, you know, narrative going around that Dragon Ball fans are not necessarily anime fans. They don't kind of coexist in the same realm. Now, I'm not saying all of them don't. Obviously, I know quite a few people, D-Free is one of them, that actually goes and watches one, the other. You know, he'll go and watch Dragon Ball, Bleach, Pokemon, all this other stuff.
I watch Pokemon. Don't even put that on me, bro. Like, what the hell?
Oh, he plays Pokemon. That's kind of the same thing, right?
No, it's not even close to being the same thing. I can actually become a master. This guy has been trying for like 700 episodes. He's still 10, and he can't become a master. Don't even freaking speak that on me.
Because he's 10.
I've watched that guy stay 10 while I've progressively gotten older.
Okay, well, what about, you know, Luffy? Luffy wants to be the Pirate King, and he can't do that yet. He's trying.
Yeah, he's trying.
So anyway,
he hasn't had 13 tries though. Every time Ash gets to the Pokeball League, he loses.
Anyway, guys, that's actually really funny. Anyway, guys, so basically, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Why exactly aren't Dragon Ball fans necessarily anime fans? And, you know, I don't think that there's one right answer for any particular person. It just kind of falls to your preference. But if I could be like, I'll open up and I'll kind of explain to y'all exactly why I'm not really, or at least until very, very recently, I haven't been necessarily an anime fan, when my whole life almost, or basically my whole life, I've been a diehard Dragon Ball fan. And that is because when I was 8 years old, or maybe 8 or 7 in 1998, Toonami started playing Dragon Ball for the first time, Dragon Ball Z. And at that time, at least kind of to me, because the only other things that were on anime-wise, regardless of whether I knew it was anime or not, or just thought it was a television show, a cartoon that was kind of a different art style and a little bit more violent, was Pokemon and Sailor Moon. That's the only stuff I really remember. And then later down the line came Yu Yu Hakusho, and later down the line, and Gundam Wing and all that. And then we had, you know, way later down the line in the mid-2000s was Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece. But back then, back in 1989, at least for me, there was nothing to watch. I mean, there was nothing really to go on. It was just literally Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon. And I don't remember liking Pokemon. Pokemon was always kind of this, you know, Pokemon was more of an interactive experience, wouldn't you say?
I would, because the main appeal for Pokemon has always been the games. It's not really been the anime, which is why I don't watch the damn show. No, but I mean, there was nothing really like that for Dragon Ball in particular. So when it came to Pokemon, that was all there really was. It was the whole aspect that you've got red version, blue version, and you can play, you can trade, and all that stuff. So it kind of immerses you into the world. And in doing so, you have a bit more of an attachment to a series like that. Whereas with Dragon Ball, once again, the technology simply wasn't around on handhelds, at least with like the Game Boys and stuff, to be able to do stuff like that for a while at that point.
And even when they finally did get to that point, it wasn't necessarily the same as Pokemon. You know, like the Goku's Legacy or whatever, Boo's Fury.
Even still to this day, there's a reason why a Budokai, or excuse me, a Xenoverse game will sell less than 10 million copies, while an individual Pokemon game will sell upwards of 15 to 20 million copies. It's just kind of how it is. It's just how the marketing and how the brand works.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like, so Pokemon at that point, and to an even, like, almost to an even greater extent, although a lot of people did watch the anime, Yu-Gi-Oh! was a card game or a video game or something. Dragon Ball Z basically was on its own little island, and now I knew a lot of people who watch Sailor Moon or Gundam Wing, but those two, like, it was still a little different. It didn't have the same feel as something like, after Dragon Ball left, everyone likes to say Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach kind of took the reins and ran with it. But those were fairly similar, had a whole lot of the same plot points or same kind of narrative structure as Dragon Ball. They were all kind of in that same shonen realm. But back in the 90s, back in the late 90s, there was really nothing going on in terms of anything remotely close besides Yu Yu Hakusho. And then again, Yu Yu Hakusho wasn't necessarily the longest running anime.
Exactly. There weren't a lot of shows back then that I recall, because I'm a few years younger than you. I watched Dragon Ball during its initial airing, but I wasn't interested in a lot of shows. I would watch Gundam sporadically. I wouldn't touch Sailor Moon because I just kind of like being like 5 years older, so I was just like, nah, I don't want to watch that. That's for girls, because obviously it's girls in the show. I'm sure that now if I were to try to watch it again, I could appreciate it for what it was and whatever. But like, there was nothing really that even captivated me and grabbed my attention other than Dragon Ball, because the appeal of the show was just so massive. You see these guys running around, and I'll never forget, I was like 5 years old or so, and it was like my birthday, I believe, and they were airing the Goku versus Frieza fight. This is my earliest memory of Dragon Ball Z. And it was the Namek planet was about to destroy and all that stuff, and you got this lava spreading all over the place. Goku's over here bitch slapping Frieza. I'll like never forget that, man. And that was my initial interaction with the series during its initial Toonami airing. And from there, you just kind of fester that. But I think when we get on the topic of the video, a lot of people kind of just don't branch out.
Yeah, I think there's a legitimate reason for that, because like I said, like you already said and I said, in terms of anime, whether we knew it was anime or not at that time, there was nothing tangible to go, I like Dragon Ball, and wait, there's this other series, and close to it or not, it kind of has the same feel. So I like this, and I like this, and I like this. I mean, most people I know who started watching Naruto, younger people even, or just even people my age, they started watching anime really heavily, around Naruto, and then that helped them jump into Bleach, or that helped them jump into One Piece and everything. And
all
then
those early 2000 animes, yeah.
Yeah, and then they did that, and that kind of gives you a better sense. You realize that there are 3 good shows you're watching, and there's you realize that it's anime, and then you can kind of jump in from one to another, and then kind of start to diversify out. Well, maybe if this is good, maybe Full Metal Alchemist is good, and then, man, I've heard good things about this Death Note thing, so you get a better sense of it. But in the 90s, because there was nothing like that, it was kind of, Dragon Ball was alone on its island, and it really showed, because if you remember, Toonami broke huge records. I mean, they were beating prime time slots, and they're 4:30, 5:30, 3:30, whatever, wherever you lived in your time zone kind of area. I remember it played in 5:30 in New York, and that's what they always say,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like 3:30 for me most of the time, because right as soon as I got home from school, Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, whatever the case was on.
And I just remember sitting there, and it was so popular, and it was just so much of a phenomenon in terms of actually younger kids watching this stuff. Toonami would sit there and have advertisements. It was like, Dragon Ball at 5:30, nothing else matters. And at that, it was true, and into an extent, that kind of interaction with the series was absolutely true. It was this concept where if I don't watch Dragon Ball, there was something I'm not going to have anything to talk about. I'm not going to have anything to think about. I'm not going to know what to talk about in the playground the next day with all my friends. You had to see what was going on. You had to see what was going on. And I also say to this day, one of the coolest things about watching Dragon Ball for me, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GG, anything, was back in the 90s. And even so much in the mid to kind of even later 2000s that people just don't necessarily think about is, back in the 90s, there was no such thing as a serialized television show for children or adults. Basically, we had these 30-minute, hour-long dramas or comedies or something that would basically play out its entire story and then revert to zero the very next episode. It was very episodic, and people would go one thing, one story. But with Dragon Ball, it had this kind of because they stretched it out so much into nearly 300 episodes, it had this really long form narrative, which even when nothing was going on in one particular episode, there was always the promise that Namek was going to blow up in 5 minutes, or Goku is racing to get, to save everyone from the Saiyans, or, Cell's going to reach his perfect form. Can Gohan turn into a Super Saiyan 2? There was this narrative progression that kept us coming back for more because you had to understand what was going to happen next. You had to see it, and even when nothing happened, it was exciting because you knew it was building.
Exactly, and transitioning that into like current stuff, they're doing that a lot more now. And to kind of elaborate for people that aren't familiar with what Mark was saying, he was basically alluding to shows a la Family Guy and stuff like that don't really have an overarching narrative. They just kind of reset. Mm-hmm. So not to cut you off, my bad.
No. Yeah, and I think that's something that's so novel, even to this day, that I think really grabbed a lot of people's attention, that these characters kind of have, whether they're fully well realized or not, they have this flesh and blood narrative to them, where Gohan has this like inner rage building up from him this whole series, and we see flickers of it here and there, but when he turns Super Saiyan 2, it's so satisfying, and it's just something that really pulls you in. And obviously other shows have taken that. Most shows, even American shows, have started to take like, well, we can make serialized television and people will watch and understand and enjoy this stuff. In the 90s and the early 2000s, very little things actually did that.
Very true. I can't remember very many. I mean, like, I remember Cowboy, I remember Inuyasha, I remember Gundam, I remember certain shows. Pretty much all of them were animes. But kind of just like, I think that too, a lot of people growing up on that, they kind of don't really feel the need to branch out because that's their favorite thing. It was just so, the nostalgia's there. It was just so amazing to them. And they can legitimately sit there and rewatch it over and over and over. And that's not to say that Dragon Ball is the best anime in existence, because it's not. It's just too wide of a selection there between stuff that's shonen and not shonen. It's such an expansive world of content that you can literally delve into when we talk about anime specifically as like a genre, because you can get into sci-fi type stuff, you can get into dramatic stuff, you can get into stuff like Death Note, you can get into romances, you can get into more shonen and fighting and action and stuff like that if that's what you're into. There's just so many different things going around. But I think that a lot of it too, why Dragon Ball fans aren't really particularly anime fans, is that they're kind of stuck on this show in particular. They don't really feel the need to go out and quench that anime thirst, if you will, because this show is basically satiating them and always has.
Yeah, and I think, and at least from when I was growing up, and like I said, a lot of this will be like my basic experience, and maybe a lot of people who are listening to this can either identify or not identify with what I'm saying, but when I was younger, one of the reasons I didn't want to go in and watch like, Sailor Moon or anything else is there was this stuff.
Gay?
There was, gay? No, it was, now that I think back, it was a decent show. But the thing is, there was this thing in the 90s that also really helped Dragon Ball's success, in my opinion, where it was basically the start of the internet in, just normal domestic households, where the beginnings of dial-up and all that stuff kind of happened around 1998 and 97. And when you got online, and considering that Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball GT had already finished their run in Japan, and people who had been on the series far longer knew about this stuff, could kind of tell you where it was going. Plus, at that point, you already had the Toyotaro manga type of stuff. The Dragon Ball AF stuff was already rampant on the internet. And you as a kid, you're looking up and you're seeing, okay, I love this whole Saiyan arc or this Namekian arc or something. I want to know where it's going to happen next, because as we already talked about, it's a long form narrative. It takes a long time to figure out what's going to happen next, because they just kind of pad out every single episode. So you go online, you see, okay, well, Frieza starts, and then the androids, the androids Cell.
I'll just never forget, I always printed out images of people I had no idea who they were, or forms. I thought everything was just amazing. Mm-hmm. When the internet was coming out, early 2000s, late 90s, it was a hell of a time for Dragon Ball specifically.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you also, because you're sitting there and like a young fan like myself was sitting there going, oh man, Super Saiyan 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7. I can't wait to see these things. And obviously most of those are real. But you know, the thing is, this is one of the reasons too that the Dragon Ball fans are so inundated with all this kind of fakeness that we're willing to believe kind of all this Dragon Ball AF stuff, whether it was canon or not. Dragon Ball GT, all the movies people think are canon and everything. It's just a lot of different stuff that we kind of take for granted as this time to grow up and love and start kind of appreciating Dragon Ball. And it's like what you said, it's because of this, they just become so inundated. And then you start looking at stuff that comes out later and you're like, well, all these things are just huge rip-offs of Dragon Ball. And it's somewhat true, but not necessarily. I mean, they took good things and they made them better. They took the things that worked and they kind of expressed them in a different way.
Lots of, especially in other shonens like Hunter x Hunter, Naruto, a lot of other shonens wind up taking a lot of things from Dragon Ball, whether it's minor things like character designs and stuff like that, whether people choose to acknowledge it or not. Naruto took a lot of cues from Goku. It's okay, it doesn't matter. Or whether it's something like having a main protagonist and stuff like that, and just kind of just building off of what Dragon Ball had pre-established. And that's part of the reason why some stories are better told too, is because you can look at Dragon Ball as like a benchmark, like a gateway to all these other different things. It kind of opened the door, especially with like a Western audience, to where we're more able to go ahead and look into all this stuff and want to have interactions with animes in general. It kind of opened the doors for all these other series just even to come into inception, to just be created, to be honest, because so much is taken from the show. I think that once again, though, when it comes down to it, I think a lot of people need to be kind of open-minded as far as, you know, what their selections are as far as this stuff goes. But Dragon Ball, nonetheless, it's so crazy just the impact it's had and continues to have to this day. Over 30 years of the anime in Japan and whatnot, it's like the show is still going strong, and it's never truly died out. Now, some of that is a lot of that actually is a testament to the games and to the internet. But this show is just something that even a young kid can pick up today and, you know, find enjoyment in it. Because if you think about it, Dragon Ball is a shonen show, and shonens are targeted at young boys, and, you know, it's something that they can relate to and they can find enjoyment in. Because I know that my younger brother, he's probably like 14 now, he started off with Kai, and a lot of viewers probably watching this video started off with Kai. I was surprised at how young some of these people are on the internet. But you know, when you're coming in and you're just like, oh, flipping through channels, and you see this guy punching this guy and he's flying across, you're like, oh, what is this? You know, you're 6, 7, 8 years old and you're gonna stick with it. But the thing is that too, what that does is that pre-establishes another generation of fans to watch the show, and they're gonna grow up with the show the same way we did, because the show kind of hung out, and in doing so, they can introduce it to their offspring. And like Mark, I swear to God, my kids are 3 and 2. Like, I don't know, excuse me, 2. I said 3, 6 and 2. They know all about this stuff already. They really do. Mm-hmm. And they're gonna grow up with it, because it's gonna just be, you know, me constantly shoving it in their face. But like at the same time, they can say, hey, this is awesome. You can appreciate this. You can appreciate anime for what it is, and then you just keep this cycle going and going and going.
And you know, just before we close this out, I think it's important to note, you know, like you said, you know, most people who are fans of this stuff, be it people like us who are a little bit older, or even the newer generations, they're picking it up from a very early age, because Dragon Ball has just kind of stayed consistent throughout the years. But one of the things I do want to kind of mention is there is a subset of group of people who are anime fans who do not like Dragon Ball. And at the set, like, I've heard a lot of people talk about, well, Dragon Ball is just not necessarily the same type of show as all these other shonens that have come after it, or even all this other brilliant kind of narratives that have been put out there. And, you know, that too has its own kind of nooks and crannies that you need to kind of delve into, because obviously Dragon Ball isn't a perfect show. I think you and I have made that clear. Yep. Way more than we probably need to. But it's not a perfect show. But yeah, like you said, it's a benchmark for all these shows. It kind of did everything first, and then all these other things were able to take from it, kind of understand the progression of it, and build great narratives around the same structure. without Dragon Ball, without like Dragon Ball basically grandfathering this concept, would we have all the other amazing stuff that we had today? And whether you like Dragon Ball or not, I think it's important that you kind of at least try to understand and accept that and appreciate it for what it is.
Exactly. And a lot of people that are fans of other animes, like I said earlier with the Naruto thing, they don't choose to acknowledge Dragon Ball for the fact that it kind of started all of this. It started this crazy chain of all these other shows coming out and being successful. And nobody's ever confused Toriyama for being the greatest writer there is, unless you're just kind of not interested in anything else, like I said earlier, and you just kind of eat the stuff up sometimes. He's a fantastic writer, but let's just be completely honest. There are other writers in this whole anime genre thing that do it better, whether they're you can start off with the mangas too, because animes are basically adaptations of mangas in most cases. A lot of them kind of do it a little bit better, and it comes down to the fact that Dragon Ball was just kind of there, but they had it as like a benchmark. So I also would kind of pose the question is, I can't really say that. I want to say, would Dragon Ball Z have been better had it came later on? But we've got Super here, so I guess maybe not. I don't know.
That's not fair. That's not necessarily fair, because Toriyama is definitely older now. But
yeah, he's the same guy, but he's older. You're right. He's senile.
My thought is,
what color is Trunks' hair? Oh my god, I forgot.
Toei's just like, it's purple. What'd you say? It's blue. It's blue. The thing is I feel in my mind that, in my heart, in my mind, and
your heart of hearts.
My heart of hearts. My heart of the cards.
What was that girl at with the gun and what was her name again? The one that always did the sneeze.
That's ridiculous. I think the thing is no, I don't know if it would have been.
Forgot her.
I don't know if it would have been the same or similar. I feel like, I guess it is a fair question. Would Dragon Ball be as beloved as it is today if it was forced to come out after the series that we know, who've like basically taken up the reins and just kind of run with it over the last 15 or 20 years? So that's a hard question. Part of me wants to say no, but also part of me wants to say yes, just because of what it decided to do and how much everything else is taken from it, that you don't know whether anything would basically be the same if it weren't for Dragon Ball. But, just to kind of close this out, unless you have anything to say.
Nah. That's it. Like, once again, the show, Dragon Ball it was targeted for a young audience. It's made to appeal for a young audience. So you kind of have to appreciate it for what it is sometimes. Sometimes it's not going to have the most elaborate of schemes and whatnot. So I just want to throw that out there.
Exactly. And, that's where basically when you come and look at it, at least from my perspective, like I said earlier in the video, it was.
I want to throw out one more thing, just in case Danny's watching. Danny, I didn't say that Toriyama is not a good writer. I didn't say that he doesn't think his shit out. Okay, don't come from my cheeks. Just in case.
Hi, Danny.
Hey.
Anyway,
hey, girl.
I think that basically, just to close this out, like I said, just for me personally, and I would like for everyone who's listened to this video to tell me basically their experience, and whether, if you are only a Dragon Ball fanboy, then why do you love Dragon Ball over everything else? What makes it stand out? And if you do love other animes, like why did you, and you started with Dragon Ball, you didn't start with Dragon Ball, why did you go to Dragon Ball? Why did you go to other animes? Like, what was your progression there? Because everybody is different. Everyone is a unique individual flower. But for me, the time it came out was just too perfect. It was just way too, it was the serialization of a show during episodic times. It was the birth and creation of the internet, or the revolution of the internet. It was the time in which they were playing it. It was just so many things, or just basically the barren landscape of any other animes at that time to actually be played to the audience. So yeah, I mean, that's basically what I have to say. I respect Dragon Ball for everything it's done, but as a general anime fan, I have to just admit that I am among that fan base that has basically ignored all other animes until very recently in my life, and now I'm starting to kind of venture out, and I'm seeing exactly why everyone kind of thinks that Dragon Ball isn't as in depth or as well of a told story as everything else. And I think that it's a very exciting time to be at, trying to explain and explore all this different content.
Yeah, totally agree.
Anyway, guys,
I wanted to throw out mine, but I didn't want to drag on. We're almost at 30 minutes, so
it's fine. It's fine. Go for it.
Okay. No, so just briefly, what happened with me was I watched Toonami, Dragon Ball Z during initial inception, like I said earlier in the video. Around 2001, 2002, 2003, around the time Naruto was coming out, I started watching that. And I remember watching Buu Saga on TV, and I would always come in every day and watch the Buu Saga. At this point, I was like 9, 10 years old. And these are probably reruns now, thinking back at it. But I was watching the Buu Saga all the time. I would start watching Naruto, and then I got bored with regular Naruto. And like you said, the internet was so massive and popular moving around 2005, 2006. It was so crazy back then. And YouTube was just coming into its own. And back then, you could actually go on YouTube and watch full episodes of anime. You didn't have to have them all tweaked out, shrunk down like they do now to try to get past the bots on YouTube. And I would watch Naruto Shippuden on there. So that's kind of how things started for me, is I fell in love with Naruto Shippuden after that. I was watching it in Japanese. I was watching the Japanese Naruto movies. Around that time, the first Naruto movie came out, but it was only in Japanese. That was still from when he was a kid. And then I got into the mangas, and then I progressively got into the games, and then here I am at like 2007-ish, 2008-ish, and I'm in high school at this point. And I'm actually starting to really fall in love with other animes at this point, because I'm talking to people. And throughout all of this, by the way, I was a massive Yu-Gi-Oh fan. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh and Dragon Ball were my things. I had over like 4,000 Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I watched all the animes. GX was my favorite one. So Yu-Gi-Oh was there too, but we were talking about Dragon Ball in this video. And then I'm around like a freshman in high school, and I'm like, well, I'm getting into all this different stuff. I'm reading all these different animes and all these mangas and stuff like that. And then at that point, I started paying a little more attention to Bleach when it was on TV. I started watching it back then. I didn't finish it until recently, as you know, Mark. And I started paying attention to the Hunter x Hunter manga, because that had been something that was in the mangas all the time, because I would get the Shonen Jumps. I believe they're monthly. I would get them all the time. I don't even know if they sell them anymore, but at least out here. But I would get those monthly, and I didn't really pay attention to anything in there but Dragon Ball or Yu-Gi-Oh. And it just kind of transitioned from there, because I watched Yu Yu Hakusho back then, and then I didn't really remember much about it. So around 2009-ish, I rewatched the series, and then at that point, I had a genuine love for anime, and I started watching all these different undercover animes that nobody would ever know about. And they're not mainstream, because when you talk about anime, the only real mainstream animes in most cases are shonens. And I started watching other little things, little pocket animes that are 12, 13, 14 episodes long, but are fantastic, amazing storytelling. And that's when I got really, really open to all this stuff, and I've been ever since, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, we have very different progressions in terms of how you look at it, and basically just exploring it for what it's worth is so incredible. But the underlying similarity really is that Dragon Ball became so...
It all starts with Dragon Ball.
It all kind of starts with Dragon Ball, and it's kind of one of those reasons why we make this video, is because a lot of people are Dragon Ball fans and solely Dragon Ball fans. And not that that's a bad thing, but I do think I want to urge everyone to kind of venture out. If you haven't, you don't necessarily know what you're missing, and there's some great stories to be told, and
exactly
in long form and in short form. And it's not something that you realize, or you are a major anime fan and it started with Dragon Ball or something very close to it, because of just how amazing the whole concept of the internet, serialized storytelling, and everything we've talked about from here on forward. Like, it just kind of all progressed for you. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're so inundated with this stuff, and why we follow content. We make our own content just discussing this stuff. So
I totally agree.
And so anyway, guys, this has been a little bit of a long video, but I hope you've gotten something out of it. At least at least for one way or the other, you understand exactly why... you understand exactly like where we're coming from, how we kind of got into Dragon Ball and other animes from that, and why exactly Dragon Ball fans might not be anime fans, or vice versa. Why anime fans might not be Dragon Ball fans. So anyway, Please make sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. Please, if you haven't already, go over and check out D-Free's channel. He makes some amazing content. He covers both games and like amazing discussions, and he's gonna dap me. I think that's what he's like. He's telling me to wrap it up, so I'm just gonna wrap it up. D-Free, thank you for joining me.
No problem, man. I hope everybody doesn't hate me anymore.
I don't think they hate you, but this is like, honestly, I do think that this is a very special video, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Anytime.
All right, guys. We hope you enjoyed it. That's it for us right now. We'll see y'all later.
Peace.
Bye.
Peace. Peace.